you do for mental health? That'd be
Yep.
perfect.
No problem.
And I think that we're live. So welcome to the audience. We'll get going immediately because there's plenty of great content to cover off here. Before we get started, just wanted to acknowledge the place that I'm dialing in from, and that is the Wallumedegal people who occupy this place. They nurtured and cared for the land, and really appreciative of that. So thank you. And today we are covering off the topic of mental health in the workplace and how people, teams, and leaders design, deliver, and measure that along the way. And the slight backdrop to it is that I think back to the 15 years ago when I first entered the workplace and in a HR capacity. And gold standard at that time seemed to be that you had a EAP in place to handle any reactive moments where people needed the support of professional counsellors and psychologists. And between that and a bullying and harassment policy to handle reactive cases, along with the taboo of the topic of mental health. Fast forward about 14, 15 years, and I feel like we've come a really long way. And that happens through both companies thinking about the mental health in the workplace as just simply the right thing to do for their people, along with some laws that have come out, especially more recently, so that we can make sure that we're caring for our people. So that's the backdrop. My name is Anthony. I've been in the people and culture space for about 15 years across various tech companies. That's both health tech in places like Peloton and in InterSystems, and fintechs in places like Klarna and at Ansarada. And I'm joined by three lovely guests that I'll hand over to in a second. One thing that I will ask them as they're introducing themselves, though, is what one thing that they do that helps them manage and handle their mental health in the workplace. I will go first. Mine is to stay really connected with friends. I've got a close and relatively small circle of friends that I like to catch up with regularly, and I make sure that I invest the time and energy into that, and it really helps me. So I'm going to popcorn over to Brian. Sorry, I'm going to popcorn over to Julie.
Sounds good. Thanks, Anthony. And great to be here. So my name is Julie, and I have been in various HR roles for the last probably about 12, 13 years. Predominantly, my background's been working in tech founder-led businesses. Currently, I'm working for an Australian fintech company called Zella, which is revolutionizing the business finance and business banking. And it's a 4-year-old business. We've got about 260 employees globally, and I oversee the people function here. So I also have a background in positive psychology, which is a field of psychology that studies human flourishing. And of course, when we think about mental health, I think human flourishing comes kind of very closely connected to it. For me personally, one of the key strategies that help me with my mental health, I have been a long time meditator. So I do have a very regular daily practice that has been honestly nothing short of life-changing for me, and has definitely helped me grounded, especially, working in very fast-paced scale-up startups and, those environments, which, definitely has been a really, really big help for me.
Thanks for sharing, and that positive psychology and the positive flourishing of people will definitely come up in conversation later on. So I'll be sure to pick you out. Feel free to pass it on to somebody else.
Shannon, would you like to go next?
Oh, thanks, Julie. So my name's Shannon. I'm the Chief People Officer here at NetWealth. We are a founder-led ASX-listed business, been around for about 20 years. We have around 650 employees, predominantly based in Australia. I've also worked in kind of founder-led tech startups for quite a number of years, including Afterpay, online education services, and Seek. My thing that I do for mental health is free diving. Started off just kind of exploring the water and snorkeling during lockdowns because there was nowhere else to kind of go, and just kind of kept pursuing it. And now it's something that I like to get out and immerse myself in the water every weekend, or if the weather doesn't permit, in the pool. And about to buy my first mermaid tail, actually, and start this thing called mermaiding. It is a real thing. So everyone thinks I'm a bit weird, but that's
Cool.
what I do.
Love it.
Brian.
Yeah, thanks. So my name's Brian. I'm the P&C manager here at Sonda. We're an active tech healthcare company. I've been in the space for about a decade now, started in government, went through construction, did a little bit of time in pharmaceuticals, and then the last few years have been in that tech startup and scale-up space. So really enjoying the challenges and everything that comes with. And in terms of well-being, I just make sure I prioritize time with my wife, my daughter. We have a 14-month-old, and as long as I've got my time with her every day, I'm happy. So that's me.
Good stuff. Well, we can get stuck into the topic, and that is, there's a few kind of areas that there's plenty of areas that we can go down into, but one of the things that thought maybe worthwhile covering first is a lot of what we do in the people and culture space and leadership when it comes to investment in mental health is from a place of right thing to do and figuring out how to help people flourish. But there's also there are legals associated with it. And as professionals, we need to be guiding our businesses and guiding our leaders on what is upcoming and what do we need to do as a baseline. So just curious to pick each other's brains on what are some of the recent changes from a legal perspective, and how is that impacting the way that your businesses are perceiving mental health, and how is that influencing how you're going about it?
I think the positive duty to prevent, psychosocial hazards has been huge. And I personally have really welcomed that change, because it's certainly made my job a lot easier. These things I've been advocating for so many years now. Boards are like, oh, okay, this is really important. And as a result of that piece of legislation, we've invested heavily into the mental wellbeing of our people. We've been running some really great face-to-face safe at work sessions, which are really skewed towards creating a speak up culture, helping our people understand what those psychosocial hazards might be, like things like workload, and having really good discussions. And actually this week we finalised that rollout. We have done that with all 650 employees here. And it's been a resounding success, and some of the data that we've got out of those sessions as well through those conversations will certainly help us to put some more initiatives in place as well. And I just think that other thing that we've put in place, which people often overlook, is mental well-being isn't often just yoga and meditation, but it actually is about providing people with clarity. So we've also done a lot of investment in goal setting, understanding how people's roles, roll up to the overall company purpose, and being really clear about what people should be focusing on, because I think that's a really, really key driver to mental wellbeing in the workplace as well. So there are two main initiatives in response to that legislation.
One thing that kind of springs to mind, Shannon, as you talk about it, is that I feel like the recent legislative changes, the psychosocial hazards, the right to disconnect, and all of that it kind of helps us to shift focus from an individual kind of focused approach, where we are, as you said, let's do a meditation session or a yoga session, and it kind of puts it all on the employee, like it's only their job to look after their mental health. And whilst of course we as individuals play a really big role, the environment is actually what plays such an incredible impact on the employee's experience in terms of their mental health in the workplace. And now that legislatively those aspects are clearly recognized, that they impact people's mental health, it puts more of the focus on the companies to say, well, actually, employees can probably go and, listen to a meditation on YouTube in their own time. But, if they're overworked or their job design is so ambiguous that they're not clear on their goals and what success looks like and all of it, these are the actual things that companies really should be focusing on in terms of helping, and kind of it just elevated the level from the, hey, let's help an individual, to actually we can take responsibility more at the organizational and structural level in terms of what we're doing and how we're creating a culture that creates that clarity, that supports the the speaking up and all of those other really important elements as well.
Yeah, 100%. I'd love to. I know, Brian, that with working at Sonder must be fascinating because you'd get insights into what other businesses are doing as well as what you're doing.
Yeah, that's right. So as a product, one of the things that we've recently rolled out and we'll start providing data to our customers on is, again, it's all confidential, but if there's a case that comes through our support center, an employee needs support, we'll identify if it's work-related or not, and also we'll tag it to a psychosocial hazard. So that way, on a monthly basis, we can say to an organization, these are how many work-related cases you're getting, and this is the psychosocial hazard they're related to. And so it starts to inform decision-making and strategies on a regular basis, rather than, sort of set, forget, and review. It's very much that live pulse on what is happening within the organization. So that's something that Sonder's recently implemented as part of that psychosocial hazard management.
Yep. Yeah. And it's interesting you say that. I even think about how the people and culture business partners are working now. Like when an issue raises up to the team, of course, they go through and work through it and solve it like they normally would. But there's an added step now, which is, well, what's the actual psychosocial hazard that's caused this in the first place? And can we do something about it? So I think it's definitely made everyone a bit more proactive.
For sure.
Yeah. And as we're talking about data and the points that you're using to escalate things or raise concerns or opportunities with your leadership teams, what other data points are you using and what are you focused on while you're continuing to build out your strategy and with an iterative approach similar to what Brian just mentioned?
I'm happy to jump in and share what we're doing internally at Sonder. So we recently just completed our employee engagement survey, and we redesigned that to have a large section focused on psychosocial hazards and how people are responding in that space. So that way we can get our own pulse on, where are we doing well, where can we make improvements, and then using that as a catalyst to have open conversations with our business units and our teams to drive some action plans for this financial year. And on top of that, we obviously have access to a lot of data, being the kind of organization that we are. And this is all, there are reports available for anyone listening that would like to have a look through. But we can see, that 35% of employees in the last 12 months have actually taken time off for mental ill health reasons. And so we can start to look at things like absenteeism, turnover rates, looking at conducting exit interviews in an appropriate manner that's testing for those things as well. So those are a few of the ways. And obviously, it would be remiss not to acknowledge any workers' compensation claims. That's a huge red flag, and it's definitely going to tell you where you need to start focusing your energy. So,
also team performance. Like I think, we do know that when people are at their best, the performance of the organization and the team as well is impacted in a positive way. And, I think, again, this is a really amazing kind of evolution. We still have a long way to go, that, there is recognition that we're not just machines that can, as long as we're fed and hydrated, we can operate, at a maximum level with no rest and recharge type thing. So, whilst I think that one might be a little bit more difficult to measure, and, it's not as black and white as has our absenteeism levels gone up and down, but I do think that that's also really important measure in terms of, are the team consistently performing? Are we achieving our goals? And is that done in a sustainable way where it's not like, we've kind of pushed really, really, really hard and then everyone is burnt out type thing?
Yeah. Yeah, all of those statistics that you all mentioned, we also monitor. I think the only other one for us to add is we keep a really comprehensive kind of case register anonymously in P&C, even just like when really kind of, level 1 low issues are raised to us. We just kind of track them just to kind of see if there are spikes over time, see if there are any hotspots that we need to kind of delve into. And and as a result of our Safe at Work training, we've seen that increase in a positive way. So we actually see that those issues kind of bubbling to the surface that we're able to deal with before they become an issue has been quite positive. So that's been an interesting trend that we've seen over the last 12 months.
Yeah, fantastic. Actually, one thing, just to circle back to something you mentioned before, is the structural elements and how jobs are designed and whether or not people just simply have too much on. but also just somebody having a rough idea of how well they're doing and how well they're performing is one of those things that you can have all of the Pilates and yoga sessions and the cupcake sessions on Are You OK day that you want. But if you're not getting those right, then there's some underlying things there. So I just want to move that conversation into how and fruit bowls too, just got a comment through. So actually, I should have included that back in the 15 years ago. Fruit bowl was a really important thing for whatever reason. But in terms of how the mental health or just the general well-being programs are designed in your organizations, would be great to hear your lens on how are they structured and how are you building them and what pillars are you using to make sure that you're covering a lot of bases, including the structural components.
We approach wellbeing holistically. We obviously have physical, mental, and financial. And I think financial wellbeing is really closely linked to mental wellbeing, especially in this cost of living crisis that we're going through right now. And it's also being a fintech, and that's one of our strong purposes is to help people create wealth. We also provide people with income protection insurance and things like that, but also budgeting tools. And we often have seminars on how people can work through those aspects of their life as well, which we think is really important. And we also have in our training sessions, we really focused on, when it comes to mental well-being, we ran an exercise around employees of what can they do for themselves, what can they do within their teams and as a team, and then what their company can do. So it's really similar to what Julie was saying before. It is shifting that focus from, well, what just can I do for myself, but also understanding, what can we do as a team and at a company level as well, to support well-being. That's how we've kind of approached it.
That's awesome. I think some things that we're doing, and being a very young company and also kind of super fast growing, a big focus has been on helping to upskill and support our leaders, basically at all levels. And whilst kind of initially it may be like, oh well, what does that have to do with mental health? But actually, we have identified that one of the core aspects is making sure that we do have leaders at all levels of the organization that are equipped to support employees, that know how to be supportive, how to be able to drive performance. And, as well, we're speaking, Anthony, at the time, providing clarity, providing great feedback, all of those things, they may seem basic, but at the end of the day, it is so important. And I love what you talked about, Shannon, in terms of all of these, sessions and tools and insurance and benefits, so important. And yet at the same time, if you have a manager who at the same time is, non-empathetic, doesn't know how to provide feedback, doesn't give you clarity, you have absolutely no idea of how you're performing and all of those things, it is very unlikely that, from a mental health perspective, the employee will be in a positive space. So that is definitely, and I feel like if there's anyone on the call who is kind of in that really early stage business, like that is something that I think often gets overlooked, and is such an important pillar and a really important aspect to invest in and focus on, that will have very, very big impact.
Couldn't agree more.
Love that. And reminds me of a random meme that I saw the other day. And to that point, you can do all the nice things throughout the week, but you get an email on a Friday afternoon after hours from a toxic manager who's asking you to do something, and it can completely derail somebody. So the fact that you're investing so much and having such a focus area on leadership capability around that space is can't be overlooked, even though it might feel like it's just a standard thing that happens in businesses. Brian, would love to hear any of your insights on this as well.
Yeah, maybe a couple other things that I would add is focusing on preventative measures and incorporating that psychosocial risk management into your enterprise frameworks. So, for example, putting those controls directly as part of your risk management strategy, as opposed to having it as a separate piece of work. And that way it's really embedded. The other area I think that's really important when you're looking at an effective strategy is making sure that it's tailored to your specific workplace needs. So if you have a lot of frontline workers, they might see a lot of customer aggression. And so what do you put in place to support them, as opposed to a white collar workforce where, it might be more around job demands and job design. So getting that understanding first of, what's going to be most valuable for your organization, doing that research, and then make sure it's tailored to those. And again, just embedding it as part of your overall risk management strategy.
Yeah, it's really interesting about the risk management strategy, Brian, because prior to coming to NetWealth, which is a very regulated industry that has all those frameworks, prior to that, I didn't work in organisations that had that, and I'm not really a frameworky kind of person, and have spent the last 6 months doing exactly that of putting our psychosocial hazard risk management into our overall risk management processes. And I actually really surprisingly enjoyed that piece of work, because you start to identify the controls, things like leadership, that you might not have thought before that actually really do impact people's health. And so you tick a box from a regulatory perspective, but then you actually can really much more easily identify what gaps that you do have. And certainly if you're reporting to a board who wants to know what you're doing around these things, it actually provides us a really clear framework. And yeah, I'm now a massive fan of the risk register, something I never would have thought I would have said even a year ago.
Nice. Awesome.
Just leading from the point that you made, Brian, about how can it be applied individualistically to different pockets of the business or the entire business, and just thinking about like any of your experiences in personalizing the approach to well-being and mental health in a way that has scaled in your businesses, or that can scale. So would love to hear any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to maybe what Sonda does as a product. It feels a bit sales pitchy, but that's essentially what we do. So,
I didn't even mean to lay up like that, but go for it.
I won't go too hard, but essentially, we scale that personalization. It's that single point of entry for employees, and they can access a holistic approach to well-being. So they get those proactive safety supports around, I'm a mobile lender and I'm going into someone's house and I'm unsure or uncomfortable about walking in. There's a feature there where you can say, hey, check on me in half an hour, make sure I'm okay. And if not, then there's an escalation process. Likewise, if it's someone under 16 traveling home from their shift at Macca's, getting that safety and making sure that someone's actually watching them get home safely. And so we offer a holistic approach so that no matter what it is that you need, you can get it in that single point of entry. And because it's just accessible via that one app, it is really super scalable. You can just offer that to a lot of people. So that's a little bit of a sales pitch there. But I think it's in terms of making sure, and I'm going to go back to this again, making sure that it's scaling is very much about making sure that it's tailored to your organization and not necessarily doing things that are maybe nice to have. Like focus on the core things first, get them right, make sure you've built them in a way that will work for your organization long term. So basically start small and then build out from there is probably my other advice.
And recognizing that different employees in the organization have entirely different needs. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be something completely massive, like there's always, I'm a big fan that, small, consistent actions and strategies do make a big difference. And, for us, for example, and I'm sure it'll be the same in most companies, you've got different generations, you've got people with, caring responsibilities, you've got younger, recent grads who spent the last few years of their uni life in lockdowns and haven't had much, social connection, and kind of all like there's just such a massive spread of needs, and really thinking about how do we tailor and create different experiences for different people who need that. And, Anthony, when you talked at the beginning that one of your mental health strategies is social connection, right? You like to connect with your friends, and there is so much data and research that shows that us feeling connected with people who we care about, who we like, makes a really big difference. And I think, especially in our kind of hybrid world setup, we can't underestimate the importance of what we can do proactively as an organization in terms of balancing the need for flexibility for people, particularly for people who need that in terms of them being able at their best in their day-to-day lives, although I feel like everybody benefits from it to some degree, and at the same time creating opportunities for people to feel connected with their colleagues. You know, there's data that shows that if you have a friend at work, that you're so much more happier and you're much more engaged and you enjoy being there, and, you know, things like that. So it can be really, like, on a super practical level, it's kind of, okay, this is, you know, this could be our policies around an approach around flexibility, and here's how we connect together as a team, and here are some of the social things we do, and here's how we take the time out to find out a little bit more about each other on a personal level. And again, this all may sound so simple, and yet if you do this as part of your culture, it does really help to create that sense of belonging, sense of connection, and kind of adds to making sure that you're thinking about different needs of different employee cohorts as well.
It's going back to those basics and those foundational levels is the essential building block to scaling this. I mean, you can scattergun approach all these different initiatives and put in policies that no one ever reads. And at the end of the day, it really is going back to that core piece. And so for us, it's very much around our values. And I'm sure all companies have values, but, you know, we're really lucky. Well, it's not luck. It was through a lot of hard work. They're really embedded here. And yeah, we're very clear at NetWealth. It's not just what you do, but it's how you go about it as well. And so people can have those conversations with their leaders all the time. And one of my favorite values is curiosity. So to get curious as to why someone might be acting in a certain way, or get curious as to why, you know, someone needs that extra bit of flexibility. So rather than going straight to no or I can't, like really taking the time just to kind of understand that. And so we've been really doubling down on the hashtag curiosity piece here throughout this focus on mental health, because one size fits all does not work, as you say, Julie. If you try and you know, force in a policy for everyone, that's just not how human beings work, because we're all very different. And yeah, that's how we've approached it.
Yeah, that's great. I'm hearing loud and clear, simple. There's some basic things that we can all be doing, and how to make something like, how do we double down on our value of curiosity and bring that to life, can have a far wider impact than scattergun on many different initiatives. I would love to branch that across to Brian and Julie. Like Shannon's just articulated a really good example of one thing that has worked or that they're trying at the moment. What about one thing that's worked in your place and what you've been excited by?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in first. So one thing that we do is, obviously we have our own products, and people have that access to 24/7 support, but we also offer alternative supports if they're not comfortable with that method, if they prefer face-to-face. And it goes back to, you know, tailoring your approach for all people. So, you know, a good example might be an app-based support may not be suitable for someone who's later in their career, who's a blue-collar worker. That's going to be a little bit more of a struggle for them to get used to that way of receiving care. And obviously there are massive hurdles to jump through with that particular demographic. But for us, yeah, we have just been putting that in place. And again, just reiterating, it's very much about implementing it as part of our risk management strategy. And, you know, elevating that to the executive on a regular basis, and reporting on that. So that way there is that buy-in and that commitment and that understanding of why it's crucial, why it's important, and how it will impact, you know, their business units should they not appropriately, you know, work to that strategy. So.
Yeah, thanks. You've got the tool in your hands. I feel the same way about having been at Peloton for a good couple of years, and I actually, unfortunately, didn't take up the access to all of the amazing content and the product itself until pretty much when I went on parental leave, only about 9 months ago. And it was at that point where I thought, oh, actually, I could really double down on this, and this could help with my mental health and my physical health. So if companies are out there that have some sort of their product or their service is in the wellbeing space, then highly encourage people figure out how to double down on that. Julie.
Sure. Something that kind of, I guess I was thinking about, okay, how can I share something that's maybe different to all the amazing examples that already been shared? And I guess something that I wanted to talk about what we do, which again is, I think that's a bit of a thing with me, is super simple, but I do think very effective, is the recognition piece. So just, I guess at a really practical level, we use Slack for our internal comms, and we have a channel. I think that is pretty common, in organizations, where people can shout out each other. And, from a cultural perspective, that's something that we really encourage all of our senior leaders to make sure they take the time to do this, and also kind of chip in when somebody else, recognizes the team, the colleagues, and other people for amazing work and contribution that they're doing. And again, there is so much science and data backing up that kind of that sense of recognition and kind of collective celebration of wins really contributes to people feeling like there's a high sense of progress in their work and sense of meaning and connectedness to the bigger purpose of what we're doing. So something so small but done consistently and as part of your culture can really make a big difference. And that's something that we do a lot, and I think we do quite well. And it is really nice to just see kind of everybody really rallying around and celebrating those individuals. And we've got different levels of recognition, and of course there's kind of other elements and more special things we do for individuals and things like that, but kind of on a day-to-day basis, something that anyone can do, no matter what your budget in the organizationally is, and things like that, is kind of focusing on also creating that culture of celebration, celebrating wins, recognizing each other, taking time out to shout out. Every month during our all hands, our CEO, when he gets up and talks about what's happening, he always would make a point of also recognizing the specific individuals and kind of some of the outstanding work that's been going on in that month. And again, all those things done consistently make a positive impact in general.
That's amazing.
Role modeling. Yeah, the role modeling is so important. Like we having a CEO and executive team that actually role model the behaviors, so they're walking the talk, is incredibly powerful.
That is the next question that had in the back of my mind is leadership and their role in it. So, if you could elaborate on that, that would be amazing, because it's one thing for leadership to stand up front and give the proper recognition, but what else helps in your business?
Yeah. So our CEO, is very family focused. He's got 3 young kids, and so he leaves loudly if he has to, leave to go pick up the kids or attend a kids event. We actually also, one of our favourite benefits that we have here is Kids Co. So we have a school holiday program where people are able to bring in their kids. It actually helps those of us without children as well when the kids are in the office. It is so amazing. You can walk past the room and look in and look at all these little kids playing, and just the energy that brings to the office is amazing. And I had no appreciation for how stressful it was for parents with school-aged children during school holidays, of what to do with the children. And it's fully subscribed every single time we run that program. Also with taking annual leave and taking breaks. Again, we have an executive team that make sure that they do that, make sure that they take their breaks and leave loudly. So I think that's extremely important, because you can, if you're talking about how important wellbeing is, but you're sending your people emails at 9 o'clock at night, you're not really walking the talk. So we're very respectful of our people's, way they like to work.
Yeah, that's great. What about you, Brian or Julie?
Yeah, going back, I sort of feel like I'm reiterating a lot, but visibility and commitment. So how do we make sure that it's visible for that executive level and senior leadership team, and how do we build that commitment? So that can be done through structuring your KPIs for that team in a certain way, making sure that there are metrics around those linked to their own performance. Again, that risk management strategy is really important, and it makes it embedded as part of I guess, organizational, like the overall strategy, and then building that ongoing engagement. So getting them to think about what their own concerns are, how can they adjust their own strategies. So putting in place checkpoints throughout the year to sit down with your business partner or whoever it might be and say, okay, how are we tracking so far, and adding that sort of as a standing agenda item when you're doing that business partnering piece. So that way, again, it's just visible, they've got commitment, and they're ongoing, sort of engaged in making sure that it's effective and making those changes.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's probably not too much for me to add. I guess, yeah, the key thing is it's very hard to make an impact unless you have the leadership commitment and buy-in, and even just, I guess, sort of the understanding of the mental health impacts on day-to-day lives of people. And, I really resonate with what you were saying, Shannon, in terms of leaders really show an example as well. Our CEO similarly, has a family and, talks openly about that constant balance and kind of tension between, when you have a fast growing young business versus, kind of family and life, outside of work, and how important it is to make sure that those things, whilst, there's different probably seasons in life and kind of different periods, but making sure you are really finding that balance and modeling it. And, like even just very simple things at the start of winter when we had our, all hands, and our CEO just said, hey, like for those of us in Australia, it's going to be really tough. It's dark and, it impacts our mental well-being, and please make sure you look after yourselves. And I know we all probably will have less energy and, things like that. Like, again, it's just kind of that, we talk about that we've come a long way in terms of talking about mental health, and we have. And yet there's still, I think, so much stigma around it. It's still so hard for a lot of people to be able to speak up. That's why I really love, Shannon, what you talked about at the beginning in terms of that Safe at Work initiative that you've had, in terms of encouraging people to be able to say, hey, actually, I am struggling. And, it could be on sort of from something quite minor to something that is, a lot more serious. But at the end of the day, kind of, I think if we have leaders who are open and can talk about those things and kind of acknowledge that mental health is a really, really important aspect of our lives, and it is shown in those day-to-day actions and behaviors, it just makes it a lot more accessible for everybody else in the organization.
Thank you. Well, that wraps up the official questions or topics that we're going to cover today. We've got a couple of comments from the crowd. So from Olivia, thanks for putting this in. I agree with you, Julie. It's going back to about 20 minutes ago now, so I'm not exactly sure what the comment was, but many companies need more maturity in their day-to-day operations. They might have it in theory, but it doesn't translate well when applied in practice. So companies should be more transparent about the roles and responsibilities, should start after the onboarding experience. Our mental health needs to have that clarity. So thanks for adding that in there, Olivia. Thanks for coming along, Joe. Appreciate you coming on to listen. And I think that what I've heard through this conversation is that I loved at the start where talking or referring to the legislation that's coming out as a legitimate audit tool that you can use with your business, and gives some structured guidance into how you can address things and help you pick up on areas or gaps that aren't currently in place. The simplicity and the simple approach that we spoke about before, the fact that there are tools and systems and services out there that can help companies apply some basic fundamental things that people can use from a personal accountability point of view, and how all that's brought to life in a business through creating safe and open spaces, through both meetings and forums, coaching and developing leaders to be able to reward, recognize, create open dialogue with their team member in a way that they've been trained to do that, because not everybody, it doesn't come naturally to everybody. So there are a couple of my takeaways that I'd love listening to from each of you. And yeah, just really appreciate the time that you guys have taken. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with the crowd. And yeah, have a great day, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thanks,
ya.
everyone.